Hey guys, today we'll be talking about that dreaded word, families. I'm Zach from BIMteriors, and families are one of those things, categories within Revit that a lot of us are scared of, and myself included. When I first started the transition into Revit, I would spend hours on end surfing the web trying to find that perfect family for exactly what I needed. Then, when I found that family, finally, after hours of looking, what I did realize is that when I did load it into the project and needed to tweak it, either the family was so complex, I didn't even know where to start, begin, or how to change it, or the family wasn't created properly, meaning that when I brought it in, it would either sometimes even corrupt our files. So, what I want to do is I want to spend today's session going over basic Revit families, how to start, where to start, and giving you the tools. So, in this way, here, you're not spending hours on end looking for that perfect family. Rather, you can be creating the family for what you need and how you want it to work. And we could even spice it up at the end by giving it parameters. So when you do bring it into your project, now you've got further capabilities and tools to be able to kind of enter and change values and see your families adjust accordingly. Let's jump into this week's session. Hey guys, so I'm here to show you today that Revit families are not scary and are actually quite simple and super easy to navigate if you know the tools, where to start, and how to execute and how to bring them into your project rather than wasting hours on end. For this example, I'm going to do a portal detail. It's something that we use a lot in our studios, and I think it's at that basic entry level for understanding what the capabilities of Revit families are, and then we can actually spice it up too with kind of putting parameters and having the ability to flex it within our project when we bring it in. So, where to start? In this example, you can see here I've got an opening in a wall and I want to create the portal into this space. And so what I want to do is, instead of looking and spending hours on end, I want to create our own Revit family. Just had a brain fart, sorry. So where we're going to go is we're going to do File. Now, when we drop down the File option under New, this is where you have projects, but you also have families. This is where you can start to create your own families. When you select the family option, now you're going to get the select template files. And so this is really important step because when you do create your families, this is the start point. And when you bring them into your projects, when you're using your visibility graphics or filters and you're starting to find a certain category. So for example, if we were creating a furniture family, we loaded it in, and maybe on our partition plans, we don't want to see those furniture elements. We want to see them on our furniture plan. So we're going to kind of say under our visibility graphics, hide them. So if you're creating all of these furniture families and they're on the wrong template, and you go to change them within your project, within your visibility graphics, something's not happening and it's not working the way you want to, this might be the cause. And again, if you pick it wrong from here, it's not the end of the world. I can show you at the end of this video how to actually change the categories if you've by accidentally started with the wrong one. Now, if you don't know, the safest bet, you can go to metric generic and you can find the metric generic model, select on that and hit open. Now we're in the family creation zone, I like to call it. And before we start anything, look at the middle of your screen. You've got a vertical and a horizontal reference planes. And where these intersect, this is going to be your origin point, meaning where however you create your family within this zone, wherever these two lines do intersect, when you bring them into your project, that's where your grips are going to be, and that's how you can control moving your families and elements around. So before we even start understanding that reference planes are the key to success within Revit families. So instead of just going to draw lines, instead of going to create masses, creating reference planes first and really understanding what it is you want to create will help you in the long run, specifically if you want to make these families a bit more complex by adding parameters. Parameters work best with reference planes rather than masses and lines themselves. So I've got something in my head, and at this point I'll probably hopefully on the screen somewhere here or here to kind of show you a reference of what I have in my head and what I'm building towards. So in this way here, you guys aren't completely lost along this whole journey. So in this portal, for example, I'm going to go to the Create tab and I'm going to find Reference Plane. So I'm going to start drawing some reference lines to really start to think about what I want this portal to look like and what do I really want it to do at the end of the day. So if this is my origin, potentially I've got another reference plane from here to here, and this might represent that beautiful reveal that we just saw in that image that I just brought up. And then from there, I'm going to draw another line, and maybe this is the actual frame, the thickness of the frame of that portal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some dimensions to this so these aren't just blind lines. So maybe our reveal, I'm going to change from 56 and enter a value of 13. And then maybe the width and the construction of that frame is potentially 75. And I'm going to start to create more of these. So I'm going to come all the way over here to the other side of the portal and then say, again, wanting this to go 75 and wanting to copy another one, 13. So I'm going to add some dimensions, and why I'm adding dimensions, you'll see when we start to add parameters to this family. So we've got either side. We've got the reveal, we've got the construction and the frame of that portal. I might also want to create an overall. And what I'm going to do before any of this is I'm going to also select on these and lock these dimensions so that if I start to change values, at least these always stay the same. Meaning if I select on this and change this to 2000, you can see at least they move with it. So locking these dimensions and these planes will help you actually move lines, keeping them aligned to where you want them to keep them aligned to. Now we've got kind of the length, but what about the width? So we want to kind of also keep in mind that we want to create some more reference planes. And we want to create a width of the portal. So I'm going to come over here, and maybe for right now, we just keep it at a foot. So we're going to call that 305, and we're going to want to potentially create that same reveal on all sides, not just your left and your right, but potentially as well as above too. So when we get to the elevation, you'll see why we're doing this. I'm going to say 13. I'm also going to bring this down. Hopefully this isn't going too fast for you guys and you're understanding the steps I'm taking. And hopefully this is starting to paint a closer picture of this portal that we referenced earlier. Maybe at this point I can bring it up as well. Now that we've got the plan, it's starting to look like a portal. What we want to do is go to utilizing multiple views from your left to your right, to your front, to your back, to your 3Ds, but also your plans is super useful while creating your families. So I'm going to go to our front view. And at this point, we might want to dictate a height. So again, I'm going to go to the Create tab. I'm going to find the reference planes, and I'm going to just draw a line. I will give this a dimension. And at this point, we might like this portal to be at 2350, for example. And we want to continue that profile of that reveal that's running on the sides. We want it to wrap around the top. So we're going to give this a value of 13. And then again, same with that frame construction of 75. So you can see here, we've got our plan looking the way we want it to look. We've got our elevation looking. At this point, we can go one or two ways. You can apply lines to this, and that's absolutely fine. In today's session, we're actually going to be modeling and creating a mass. So next steps would be is if I go to my 3D view, nothing's there. We really haven't created any model lines or mass. So this is the point where we've kind of created the skeleton, the bones of this family, and we want to further develop it. Back to my elevation view, under the Create tab, you'll find Forms. And within Families, we can now create these extrusions and create this mass to what we want to now kind of further develop. So I'm going to hit on Extrusion, and I'm going to actually use these referenceable planes now as guides. So I'm going to kind of start here, go to the top, come to the top, and making sure that this is a fully enclosed loop is very key, or else you will get a message such as, so say if I didn't fully enclose this, I go like this, you'll get an error message saying that these have to be closed loops. So again, rather than quitting, we're going to say continue, and we're going to make sure that we close that loop and then hit on Finish Edit Mode. Great, so you can see now we've kind of started to create that reveal. We can come to our view, our 3D view. We've started to create something. And the great thing is we can come to our plan now. So we can now see that we can control where this is going to go, because without these reference planes, maybe it's a little confusing and we don't know. So we've already thought about this, and potentially that's going to go to this line here and this line here. Now we also want to create now that frame to look more similar to what we had just referenced in that reference image. Go to Create again, find your forms, and then hit Extrusion. We're going to go through that same workflow of selecting on these. And again, making sure that these are fully closed. Oops. There we go. Great, so once it's fully closed, you get the profile that you want, you're happy with, hit on the Finish Edit mode, and then we'll go back to our plan. We'll actually show the extents of where we want this extrusion to go to, and then we can start to take a look at that's as simple as it gets. Is like we really thought through with the reference planes. We then created a mass, and now we're starting to actually get something that's looking like we want to look. Now, we can load this into the project, but what we want to do is potentially these portal openings and width change throughout your project. And I don't want to have to keep creating these Revit families over and over and over again. So in your plan, these dimensions that we were just creating, this is where we can add parameters. So when I select on this length, when I select on the dimension, now within your families, you have something called the label dimension. And this is where, if you hover over to this part of the screen, this is where you can create a parameter. Now your parameter dialog box will appear. If you're working within a studio that is sharing, you can share parameters so that you then start with a base point and you have access to that. In this example, we'll just do family parameters, and it's going to ask you to now put in a little bit more information. So we want to understand what this parameter is. So maybe this is going to be portal length, and it's going to be common, it's going to be a length, it's going to be a dimension. So we know all of that. Now, one thing I want to kind of bring to your attention is you have something called a type and an instance parameter. So a type parameter means that if you edit the type, wherever this is in the project, it's all going to change to that new value that you just put in. Where if you made this an instance, it means that if this is not going to be standardized throughout your project and they're going to change from one to another within the flow of your design, then this is a great example to make this an instance parameter. So then you have the flexibility to kind of modify as you need, and it's only affecting that instance, meaning instance parameter. So we're going to actually say that this is an instance parameter. Great. And we're going to do the same workflow for the width. but maybe the width is always going to be 300. So potentially we'll want that to be a type parameter. So I'm going to say portal width, but then maybe it's not. So in this case here, I know for a fact that the opening that I have created in the project is not 305. So we're going to make this an instance so that we can fit it perfectly to the situation scenario back into my project. You can go even one step further. So we've got our lengths, we've got our widths, but what happens if you want your reveals to change? So from a click of a button can change all your reveals from 13 to 25 or whatever the new value that you want, but also same with your frames. So maybe it's not 75, maybe it's 50, maybe it's 100. So let's do those same workflows for our portal reveal, and I'm going to call that a type because wherever this changes, I want them all to change. I don't want them to be slightly different. This is maybe something I want to keep consistent with our portal details. And what I can do is select a few of them, and under the drop down, it'll remember now the parameters that you have created. So I could assign all those 13s to the portal reveal. Meaning if I change this to 25, you can see anywhere in my project, anywhere where this is in this family, will now change instantly. So that's the great thing about using reference planes. I'm going to make this a little smaller scale so that we can start to see so they're not all over top of each other. I'm going to create another parameter and call this portal frame. And this will also be a type parameter. So this way here, if it changes in one, it changes in all. And that's how I want it. But if that's something different for you and you want each one to be different, instance parameter will work perfectly for you. I'm going to come over here and change that as well. I'm going to go to our elevation view, and keep in mind we've already got these created. So let's utilize putting in the frame and then putting in the reveal. I'm just going to move these from each other so we can see. But we also want to have control in our project of the portal height. And so in this case here, again, coming to our parameter properties, creating another parameter, portal height. I'm going to make this an instance because this might change from room to room to level. Now, the most important part, if I were to change this height to 2600, so in this case here, I love live examples because this worked, but sometimes it doesn't. And the big thing, if it doesn't, is making sure that your extrusions are locked to your reference plane. So in this way here, all of our dimensions are to our reference plane. So as those move, so will your mass. And if they're not locked to them, sometimes your reference planes will move, but your mass doesn't. So if you are experiencing that, a quick fix is align these together. So you're making sure that your extrusions are locked to your reference planes, and as they move, so does your mass. So that will fix that. I'm going to go back to our references here, and I'm going to see if I start to change this to 2000 to enter a value of 2300. You can see here, everything flexes together, which is amazing. So when we are happy and we're done with our, in this case here, portal family, before we load it in, going to File, Save As a Family. And what we're going to want to do is save this as giving it a name. So this way here, when you do bring it into your project, you know exactly what family, if you're searching for it or looking for it, very easy. I'm going to now load this into our project. So you can see here, I now remembering those origin points. So it's always going to be at this location. So when I do have it selected, it's going to be here. And now the great thing is this is potentially we want it to stretch to the other side of that opening and we want to change its depth. So because now we've created this, we made it work the way we want it to work, look like, it's now super easy to modify and adjust when you bring it into your project. So when I select on this, on the properties, you can see here now those dimensions pop up here. Not only do they pop up here, but I can actually drag this to these openings. And this is a prime example. So I'm glad this worked. Is like I dragged it and nothing happened. So that means if I go back to my family, it means that these constraints aren't being locked. So we want to make sure that I'm locking those elements or the mass to those reference planes. And in doing so and loading that back in, that now fixes that. So you can see that was a great example of if you create your mass, you did not lock it to your reference planes, stuff like that will happen. So sometimes, you know what, it's just going to be trial and error until you get used to this workflow. But you can see that this is a super easy. And again, it's moving the way you want it to. And if we were to grab a little 3D to see what this is starting to look like in our project, we can start to see that I'm starting to see this. Now, one extra bonus feature, you've listened all the way to this point. What I want to do is maybe you want to give a material to this. How do I give a material to this? So if we go back into our project, what we can do is when we have a mass selected, under the properties, under material and finishes by category, you can assign it a material within here, and that's fine. However, if you want to use some of the materials that you have in your project already from your templates or you've created, and you want a bit more control of it, when you hover over to this little associate family parameter options and select it, we can actually put parameters not only on dimensions, but also materials. So in this case here, I'm going to click on new, and this might be portal, reveal, and this might be, I want all of them to change this way, so I'll keep this a type parameter. And again, you'll see that the group parameters, when you do have it in your properties in your project, will come under materials and finishes. And making sure that we're giving it a unique name. So I'm going to say we're going to only need one finish, and this might be all wood as in our example. So portal, material, and finishes. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm also going to select this mass and apply that same parameter that we just put on for our reveal. I'm going to load it into our project. So now when I come to this and I select on my portal, what I can do in the edit type. So keeping in mind any type parameters that we put onto this is that we've got our portal frame in here, we got our reveal, but now we also have our finishes. So if we were to select on this and give it a funky brick pattern for this example and go OK and hit OK, you can see now we've just put a brick finish material hatch on our portal. So hopefully, keeping in mind that we did this for portals, you can do this for any family that you need to create. Start with these workflows, and hopefully now you're not spending hours on end trying to find that perfect family, and now you have the tools to create your own. That was a wrap on basic Revit families. Hopefully that the content we went through today gives you more confidence and the capabilities to know where to start, how to execute, how to bring it in your project, and get away from wasting hours on end trying to find that perfect family when you can be doing it yourselves. If you're hearing this message, it means that you've listened to the new content all the way to the end, and for that I thank you. Please like and subscribe below to gain access to new Revit content weekly.